Welcome to Tenuous Connection, Part 3. Most of this video was lifted from my essay called Jazz and Democracy. I have provided two links in the About section. In the first link, you can read the essay for free online. Better yet, if you click on the second link, you can buy my book, give me some money, and read it there. Now on to the subject. It is often stressed how jazz is democratic. Michelle Obama stated that there is no better example of democracy than a jazz ensemble. Duke Ellington said the following: "Put it this way, jazz is a good barometer of freedom. In its beginnings, the United States spawned certain ideals of freedom and independence through which, eventually, jazz evolved, and the music is so free that many people say that it is the only unhampered, unhindered expression of complete freedom yet provided in this country." But why is jazz democratic? It involves a group of players. They must play with each other. They often play in the same key, in a certain time signature, and they often have to play the same chord progressions. However, within this context, everyone playing together and trying to work together, each individual member can express himself. This is similar to a liberal democracy, in which groups of people with different perspectives have to work with each other, but its citizens can still freely express themselves and criticize power. In the jazz ensemble, a soloist can usually play a solo, but that solo must usually have something to do with what everyone else in that ensemble is playing. In a liberal democracy, citizens can do and say things as long as their behavior is lawful. Indeed, Dave Brubeck said, "Jazz is about the only form of art existing today in which there is freedom of the individual without the loss of group contact." Additionally, each member of a jazz band has moral and rational worth. As a liberal democracy also has a belief in the individual, but it also believes in the equal worth of all its members. Each member of a jazz ensemble is usually rewarded with his own solo and uses his reason to improvise it. The liberal democracy also extolling reason, the capability of the individual to use his reason. It also depends on his moral worth, another attribute extolled by liberal democracies, since each member of the band must pay respect to the rights of the other members. The members must back the soloist and play in the appropriate key and meter. Liberal democracies also have a suspicion of concentrated power, be they in groups, individuals, or governments. Jazz also has a belief in consent and shared power. Power is equally distributed, since all members are given the opportunity to solo. Although it was created in the black community in the United States, it has flourished in all parts of the world. It is particularly popular in Latin America and Eastern Europe, and it has been embedded with the folkloric music of all cultures. Crucially, dictatorships often banned jazz. It was banned both by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Jazz was an integral part of Germany during the Weimar Republic. The Nazi ideology harbored a strong dislike of the genre. This essay will look at how the Nazis came to classify the genre and why it repelled them on ideological and racial grounds. The Nazis defied jazz because it was a music of free expression, consent, and equal rights. For this reason alone, it sought to regulate it. However, it also sought to taxonomize it because it was an Afro-American type of music with strong links to the Jewish community. In 1928, Bernd Polster wrote an article which attacked the genre. He said, "The fundamentals of jazz are the syncopation and rhythmic aspects of the Negro. Their modernization is the work of New York Jews. So jazz is Negro music seen through the eyes of the Jews." From a purely formal perspective, its syncopation and dissonant nature were not enough to guarantee its prescription. The Nazis railed against all forms of modernism and degenerate art. Because jazz is associated with minority groups, this highlights how tolerant it is of diversity. It also contravenes the social homogeneity that the Nazis wanted to impose on people and its totalitarian desire to control every sphere of human interest. Of course, like Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union was a totalitarian society in that it sought to control all human enterprise. The values of jazz, cosmopolitanism, universalism, freedom of expression, and a belief in the individual and the liberty of the individual were all actively prescribed by the Soviets. As well as disliking its individualistic streak, it strongly disliked its cosmopolitan streak. It was a form of capitalistic American culture that was seeping into their own. As such, the Soviets wanted art to conform to Soviet ideals. Apart from the new economic plan, during the era of the new economic plan, artists were formed to conform to state propaganda. An example of this would be the socialist realism of the Stalinist period. The cultural policy of the Iron Fist demanded that all culture follow this mantra, which was defined by Joseph Stalin. Most art, let alone jazz, was considered bourgeois. Vladimir Lenin made the following pronouncement about music. You can't listen to music too often. It affects your nerves, makes you want to say stupid things, and struck the heads of people who would create such beauty in this vile hell. The Soviets wanted all art to conform to their particular view of aesthetics, which was communistic. Of course, improvisation is the core element behind jazz, and as this video has already established, it's a manifestation of individual freedom and creative expression, both of which were anathema to the Soviet regime. Jazz was banned ultimately because it suggested individual freedom, and the Soviets wanted to create a homogeneous society. Initially, however, a debate raged as to whether jazz was symbolic of the black struggle against racial oppression in the United States, or whether it was merely an expression of bourgeois individualism. Maxim Gorky wrote an essay in 1928 called On the Music of the Gross, in which he claimed that jazz was a simple symbol of the seedy side of capitalism. This argument won, and the existence of jazz in the Soviet Union was soon in jeopardy. Because of its founding principles, the Soviet Union did not like jazz. It would soon clamp down on it. Initially, jazz was popular and officially tolerated before Stalin's cultural repression. During Lenin's rule, the pianist Leopold Teplitsky was sent to the USA to study jazz techniques. Under Stalin's iron fist, laws were passed that prohibited anyone from playing or importing jazz records. After collectivization in 1932 and the purges of 1980 and 1936, jazz was rehabilitated. Fox and trot lessons were offered to workers. Interest in jazz rose during the Second World War, and as in Nazi Germany, regulations were relaxed after officials diverted their attention to the war. During the Cold War, the Soviets revamped their propaganda campaign, with American music singled out as being part of a capitalist plot to take over the world. In 1947, the Soviet Union started a large propaganda campaign called anti-cosmopolitanism. Their campaign argued that Western culture degenerated and that the Soviet Union had nothing to learn from the West. Jazz bands fell foul of this campaign. Public use of the word jazz was forbidden, saxophones were confiscated, and hundreds of musicians were sent to concentration camps. Jazz musicians formed bands and gulags. Like the Nazis, the Soviets soon sought to sanitize jazz, and a jazz orchestra was established. Its intention was to add symphonic music to the vulgar pop music of the West. They tried to remove syncopation and improvisation. The music that this band played could scarcely be called jazz. It was, really, band music. The attempt to make jazz more European and Soviet via symphonic touches was an attempt to make it more standardized and rigid. By shedding its improvisatory nature, it was shedding those features which made it a hallmark of bourgeois individualism. Also, adding symphonic touches was also an attempt to make the music more Russian. There is, after all, a strong history of Russian symphonic music, and there is such a thing as a Russian style in the classical tradition. Thank you very much, and don't forget to read the full essay, preferably by buying my book. Goodbye.